for the poor if you're a business benefactor, and we'll hook you up. But again, this sells out every year. So if you're thinking about it, do it, because this is the best way to elevate and take your company to the next level.
And you're helping people.
Exactly. And that's what the Christmas season is all about, right?
That's what it's about.
Besides smash and grabs. I like my undocumented shopping, by the way. All right. So yesterday, President Biden, through his spokesperson, Jen Psaki, announced that the U.S. diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics. Here's the big announcement.
The administration will not send any diplomatic or official representation to the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics and Paralympic Games. We will not be contributing to the fanfare of the Games. U.S. diplomatic or official representation would treat these games as business as usual in the face of the PRC's egregious human rights abuses and atrocities in Xinjiang, and we simply can't do that.
Yeah, crushing the democracy movement in Hong Kong, threatening Taiwan, the genocide of the minority Uyghurs, and the disappearance of the top tennis star, Peng Shuai.
Yeah.
We still don't know where she is. So why not do what Jimmy Carter did in the 1980 Olympics in Moscow and just boycott the athletes? Yeah. And because, obviously at the time Russia was invading Afghanistan. Let's begin there with Indiana Senator Mike Braun. Good morning, Mr. Braun. How are you?
Hey, very good. Good to be back on.
Should call you Senator. Excuse me. I forgive myself. So what was that the right move yesterday that was made?
That's, to me, minimal kind of lip service to the bigger issue at hand. And not only China, but look what's happening with Russia, amassing troops on the Ukrainian border. You got China looking at putting a military base and port in Equatorial Guinea. I mean, there's so many things that go beyond just this. And no, I think that with their behavior, which is clear, they're playing the long game as well. This investment in, infrastructure throughout Africa, South America, that's something to be concerned with. And when we keep doing things that, what about Taiwan to boot? We've been very kind of ambivalent on what that action would be if they make the move. And it's China and Russia generally err on the side of pushing the envelope and end up moving the boundary a little bit. And with China, they very well can be a larger economy than ours within just a few decades. And they are clear they want to replace us on the world stage. And we're kind of consumers and spenders, not long-term thinkers here in the U.S., and we definitely have less endurance for pain and discomfort. So you add all that up, I think that we've let them go way too far without being a little more forceful in terms of what a long-term relationship might look like and where we're going to actually put some real impediments in their way.
And I love China's response. They said, we don't care if the diplomats come or not. They care less.
And, they're getting increasingly dismissive of the fact that for 20, 30 years we've been building their economy in kind of a precarious way to where a lot of the entities going there, so attracted to the huge consumer market, end up giving a lot of technology and so forth, and what they don't give, they take. Sooner or later, that's all going to come home to roost, and we may be beyond the point of, when we really are ready to take some type of significant action, mostly intertwined with a good long-term strategy that doesn't let them incrementally keep moving it in their direction to the detriment of ours.
Yeah. Good morning, Senator Braun. I got a question for you. I want to kind of shift the conversation.
Sure.
There are rumors that Senator McConnell and Schumer in talks about removing the filibuster or waiving the filibuster to raise the debt ceiling. Where do you stand on that? And do you think that's something that we should do? Because I'm looking back at the historical aspect of that. I'm looking at Dashiell. I'm looking at Harry Reid. There's always a Democrat in power when we move towards this waiving of the filibuster. What are your thoughts about that?
When I look at things like that seem to be where we're acquiescing, giving in to whatever accommodates more government. I call it an unholy alliance here. I'm one of few that'll speak out. I'm a big believer in term limits, number one. I think we'd get people in here that have actually got less consideration on the extent and longevity of their career and maybe making some decisions that bring back some fiscal integrity. But, when we moved it a few months ago to give time for them to do it through reconciliation, I thought that was the game plan. And I vote against all this nonsense that pretty well accepts trillion-dollar deficits, the fact we do no budgeting in regular order, that we roll over, give the Dems everything they want on domestic policy to extract what we need on defense. I think that's the most important thing we should do as a country, a federal government, but not to where we hold them sacrosanct, don't require any budgeting, don't require any audits. We waste just as much money in the military as we do on the domestic side. This is all part of what's going to run us into the ditch in a hard way, like when we completely go through the Medicare Trust Fund here in about 4.5, 5 years. We need to be taking some, action that just phases us back into something when we weren't relying on debt to finance all the next best ideas we have here at the federal government level.
All right, so the WHO came out over the weekend and said there have been 0 Omicron variant deaths at 0 around the world, and this new variant may not be so severe as first thought. Do you think that President Biden then should lift the travel ban to the 9 African countries and change that testing period back to 72 hours? Because right now it's currently at 24 hours. If you want to travel internationally and get back home.
I think the federal government, especially Democrats, are having withdrawal symptoms when it comes to the fact that they've been quite happy with the country marinating in fear from the get-go. And my observation as a Main Street entrepreneur who ran my own business for 37 years, we all took it seriously at that business level. They have no appreciation for the productive side of the economy. They want us to pay all the bills, and I think they're going to keep doing things that make that as the main driver, even though it's starting to fall short among the public. I think common sense generally prevails in the long run. This thing is endemic. Thank goodness we got a vaccine quickly. We're going to need therapeutics. We're going to also need stuff that prevents it. And they are okay with, look what de Blasio just did in New York City. On his way out the door, he's going to hamstring all the businesses there that got to be wondering, how do I survive the next stupid decision from a politician or a bureaucrat?
And Senator, speaking of stupid decisions, I've been really following a lot of the bills that have been passed, and I know there was, I believe it was November 30th, H.R. 550. It's the Immunization Infrastructure Modernization Act of 2021. That has a lot of people up in arms because people are looking at this as the database that they're going to be using to track unvaccinated and vaccinated people. I think that's a sticky, slippery slope. Where do you stand? And I hope that you guys in the Senate kill that bill.
Well, sad thing is, if it's going to move through, is that part of the BBB, or are they going to stick it in something? I think it might have.
It's a standalone bill right now.
Okay, so either way, they can either shove it into something or it could get across the finish line. When it gets here, sadly, and this is how important the last midterms were, is we're dependent on just a handful of the few moderate Democrats that are left in the U.S. Senate. So I really will need to ask Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema or maybe Mark Kelly. When I got involved and led the way on the CRA, the Congressional Review Act, that was the only way to put every senator, every House member on record. Do you think that this makes sense on this navigation through COVID, that you distill it down to you either get it or you lose your job? Axios did a poll. Only 14% of Americans believe that makes sense. That means 2/3 of Democrats don't. They keep digging the hole deeper. I really believe it is because they look what they've done with it. The rescue bill, $2 trillion. Now this craziness of another $2 trillion, borrowing every penny of it. It lets them shoehorn in other ideas along with keeping the public on edge, in fear, and they use it as a tool, I think, to get other things in their agenda done. That's just another example of where it goes when government goes wild.
And you know what scares me is going to the grocery store. I mean, I have sticker shock. Literally, groceries going up from 200, what used to be 200, now 300 plus for the same staples that you used to get. And then they said yesterday that this isn't going to go away for 3 more years. We're going to have to live with this.
Well, it's the economy, stupid, that's been out there. Carville has pushed that. They're risking, because when the shelves are empty and things like food and gas are at record highs, and it looks like it is not transitory, that it's now going to be kind of embedded into the economy. And look at this. Pre-COVID, everything was working on all cylinders. The economy was growing 2.5% to 3%. No inflation. Man, I wish we were back to the days of where government, at least, other than we weren't solving long-term debt, we weren't making hard decisions on the things that drive our trillion-dollar deficits. We were just in a much better place until it got hijacked by bureaucrats and politicians with the pandemic. It was a feisty foe. It's going to remain a feisty foe. It's going to be endemic. It shouldn't rule the dynamic. Dems, when they seize the moment, you got to give them credit. They go for broke, and I think they're going to break the country in the process.
And real quickly, wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier about the conversation today President Biden is going to have with Vladimir Putin. What are you hearing about Russia possibly invading Ukraine? And do you think President Biden will do the right thing?
Well, when you look at what happened in the last version of this, we ended up giving up Crimea, and they're now in the eastern third of the Ukraine. And I think that this will be telling. Democrats have often been wanting to negotiate their way out of these international pickles. Let's look at Iran. That generally doesn't work with bad players. They generally react to a guy like maybe Trump, where he said, hey, if you pull this off, there will be consequences.
Right.
And if you look at it, none of that stuff happened because they really respected that point of view. And here I sense that this is going to be another version of what we've seen in the past. We're going to get let bad players probably get their way. Even if they don't invade, they're going to put themselves in a posture where they can be a stage for other mischief around their neighborhood.
Yeah, Senator Braun, you were one of the good ones, and I have to admit, I did make calls on your behalf when you first ran for Senate. So keep fighting the good fight. You really are one of the good ones.
I'll keep doing it. It's been almost halfway through my term, and I don't think there's been a dull moment. So I'll keep doing that. I ran for that reason, and it's for Main Street and the average individual, not big government and big business.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there. Have a wonderful holiday season.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much. U.S. Republican Senator for Indiana, Mike Braun, joining us on our Turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer, was it really truly a victory at Oak Park River Forest High School? We'll explain. And later, we'll tell you where the Let's Go Brandon store has opened. It's in a very peculiar place. It was very strange that they chose this state. We'll explain. But now let's head into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
A University of Chicago employee is robbed at knife point. Man found shot to death on Chicago's southwest side as police continue to investigate. The DOJ is closing the investigation into the Emmett Till murder with